Welcome to More Than a Coach. I am here with a special guest tonight. We have the one and only Carl Lewis as our guest tonight. And as you see right there on the screen, it just says Carl. He doesn't need a last name. He doesn't need a special introduction. He doesn't need me to say 9-time Olympic gold medalist because that goes without saying. When you hear the name Carl Lewis, it is synonymous with greatness. He is one of the greatest athletes of all time, not just one of the greatest track athletes, but one of the greatest athletes of all time, and has been on the scene making his mark as one of the greatest coaches of all time as well. Welcome to the show, Carl.
Great, thank you. It's kind of funny because I see you like every day out on the track working with everyone, and now we're like doing this thing. So thank you for having me. And I'm really excited about not only your show here, but what you're doing. And I've watched your episodes, and I'm having a good time with it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. And yes, I get the opportunity to learn from Carl Lewis on a regular basis on the track, Coach Carl Lewis and Leroy Burrell, and it is such a blessing. I've learned so much. And right before we started, you were talking about the demonstration I have on Twitter. And yes, that demonstration is from your tennis ball analogy that many coaches probably have heard, but I give all credit to you for verbalizing the analogy. And I did it one day when I was coaching at high school, and it was an aha moment for the kids. Do you want to talk a little bit about that concept as we get started?
Actually, I saw you did a very good job of explaining that. Just to kind of give a little backstory, one of the things I found out when I started working with this and working with Coach Tellez and with him, and of course Leroy, Coach Burrell, about coaching, is that I wanted to learn and understand, but not just that, I wanted to be able to explain it. You go to a lot of clinics, and all of a sudden it seems like the people up front are trying to make sure you know they're smart. And I like to take, and it kind of sounds kind of shady to say, but I like to take kind of like a simplified idea of explaining everything. I really don't have to prove to people I'm smarter than them, because most cases I probably am not. So I want to speak in a way that everyone can understand. So we came up with this concept of teaching to apply force to the ground, because that's how you go faster. You don't go faster by getting off the ground quicker. You go about applying more force. So we took a ball and we dropped it to the ground. It bounced a little bit. And then when you want that ball to go higher and faster, everyone automatically knew to throw it hard. But when we're running, we want things to do something else. So it's just going back to the basic principles of science, using science to understand. And it's kind of like those, I guess, the engineers on TV or the scientists on TV that say, well, I'm talking to kids. Well, you can talk to kids and also adults in the same way, and I think that's what's important about it.
Wow. And talk to me about, how did you end up becoming a coach in the first place, Coach? What made you make the transition from being an athlete to a coach?
Well, that's a great question, and I haven't gone really in depth to it very much. But when I retired, I had less than zero desire to get involved in coaching at all. None, zero. And so I moved to California, and I was doing other things. And then when I moved back to New Jersey for a few years, I started helping out volunteering at my whole high school. Just help coach over there, and it was actually fun working with the young people and getting a chance to help Martin Booker, who was the head coach then, who I'd known for years, build the Willingboro High School track team back was a lot of fun for me. So in the process, I met a gentleman named Isaac Williams, who came out as a sophomore and had never run track before. And he ended up going to U of H and becoming a first-team All-American in high hurdles. So that's what I got there. And then when I moved back to Houston in 2013, I had a lot of time on my hands. Basically, other than my company, CLEG, and the charity work that I do, I had a lot of time. So I just said I'd go out and help Coach Leroy Burrell, who's been a friend of mine, for years, and volunteered that first year. And it just so happened that Cameron Burrell was coming out. His son was a freshman that year. So since I remember when Cameron was born, and he and his mother and father met, and so I said I'd help out. And basically, Cameron had a phenomenal year as a freshman. He led the nation most of the year in the 60-meter dash. He placed in nationals as a freshman. So when I got in there, I saw the work that Leroy was doing, as well as Will Blackburn and Kyle Tellez and all the coaches. I saw what was happening. And I figured, since I was not only the new person, but the fresh mind, because they had such a tremendous amount of success for so many years in Conference USA. But it just felt like everyone's getting kind of burned a little bit. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm just tired. So I brought him a fresh mind. I said, what can I do to help? And out of that, Leroy asked me to become a sprint coach for the men. And that's, I guess, they say the rest is history. Then I kind of caught the bug. And my desire was to make the university a national championship and also help the university get people to the Olympic Games, because that's the concept. We're an Olympic-based program. So between doing that, and then it took me a couple of years to get up to their speed. And then once we did, and Leroy and I really figured out how to work the sprints. I do the 100, 200. I work with the long jumpers. He does the 400, 4x4, and the hurdlers. And then we kind of come together on the relays. It's really a good system. It took me a while to catch up to it, but now with recruiting and all these things, I've gotten used to it. But I tell you, and you know this, way back in the beginning, one of the first things I wanted to make sure I did was let the coaches, high school coaches, understand that, hey, I'm actually doing this and I'm serious about it. So I spent quite a few days in rain and sleep, whatever it was in Houston, going to beach way back in 2013, 2014, and 15, getting to know, not just getting to know them, but letting them know that I'm here and serious about it, because we're a Texas-based team. 75% of our team is from Texas, and more than half of them are from Houston. So when you see those sprinters go, 3 out of 4 of the sprinters that have won a national championship in the relay have all been from Houston. Cameron, Eli, Mario Burke has been the only one that has it. Jakarius Martin, John Lewis, they're all from Houston. And so we're a homegrown program, and we do that because we're focused on getting them and developing. Every one of them came through. They all improved in their time. And luckily and fortunately for us, they're getting their degree, because that's part of my plan, coming here, spending here 4 years, and taking the entire package and finishing school, doing the best you can, and in many cases, like a lot of those guys, going on to post-collegiate career.
Right. And you mentioned getting the degree. I remember you saying one day how on recruiting visits, and I don't know if I should say it, but how you talk to kids about their future, not just about where they see themselves in a year or not or so, but what do they see for their lives?
Well, the thing is that I have a litmus test, I guess, for everyone, and it's I'm going to say it, probably you want to steal it now, but it's okay. But I asked them to tell me who you are at 40 years old, and some kids really focus. Oh, I got this. I'm thinking that. Then others are like, I have never thought about that, because the reality as a teacher, and I really don't call myself a coach as a teacher, because I feel it's the system that I learned through Coach Tellez and science, and now I'm teaching that to these young people. So as a teacher, you get to college, you continue to develop as a young person, and you become a man or a woman in this program in this time. We're going to be there when you probably get your first job, maybe meet your girlfriend, possibly future wife. All of these things, we're a part of that process. And so you build a relationship where people are going to be there. I mean, when my father passed away, Coach Tellez was right there standing next to me. So you understanding this, I want to know what you want to be at that time so that we can make plans. Because if you want to be a doctor and a 5-time Olympian, someone's got to compromise. You know? And the funny one about it is that whenever I ask how many kids, and they always throw out these numbers, and I'm like, well, make sure you talk to her first before you start blurting out kids' numbers. You know? She's a very important part of that process.
Right.
So, but to me, it's selling the whole person. When I came through as an athlete, I wanted to win 4 gold medals. I wanted to be famous. I wanted to be rich. I wanted to finish everything. I wanted it all. And so why can't everyone want it all? And the thing is that it doesn't mean you're going to get it all, because if you stop and think, I've tried 4 times to win 4 gold medals at the Olympics. I went to the Olympic trials 4 times in all 4 events. Even at 35, I did all 4, because I said you just never really know. And so my thing is to have a philosophy of saying, why can't I try to get everything? And in the process, I'm probably going to get a little bit more than I ever thought I could.
Now, you're going to have to talk a little bit about that, Coach. You went 4 times trying to get 4 gold medals. And you made an analogy one day at practice that now you have 9 gold medals because you went out there and set that goal to try to get 4 gold medals each and every time. So you allowed yourself the permission to, like, sometimes people set a goal like that, but they're afraid to even try it because of that possibility of failing. But taking that possibility of failing actually is what made you one of the greatest of all time.
Right. And it's so important. It's a great point. It's so important to understand that the only reason the person makes the great shot is because they were not afraid to take it. And I won 9 gold medals. Actually, in reality, I tried for 16 because that includes the relays. So I won 9 gold and a silver. So it was a good thing. And one of the relays, they dropped it. I wasn't on it. So let's just say that could be 11 out of 16. But the thing is that there's no way I would have ever gone to 4 gold for Olympic Games if I wasn't thinking about that. And let me try it one more time. Let me see what I can do one more year. And doing things like changing my diet and all of that. But what happened is that I had the 40-year plan. And the 40-year plan was the things I just mentioned earlier. I knew what I wanted to be. And so I just kept striving until I got to that 40-year plan. A lot of it happened early. And part of that was jumping 29 feet. And so it's a funny thing about it. When I did finally jump 29 feet, get past Stevens' record, I did it 2 more times, 3 times the same day and lost. And I didn't even win that day. And so it took a world record for me to lose that day. But Mike Powell, he said, that's cool that you have your 40-year plan, but I have mine too. But the thing is that I can walk away saying, I accomplished what I wanted. It's just that you don't get everything all the time. But I can't look back and say that was a mistake. It was the best thing I could have ever done.
Wow. Best thing that you ever done. Yeah. And for 2 jumpers and 1 meet to go beneath, or above what the current world record was. And then now we look at, well, I think this year long jump is improving. But in past years, there have been not any jumps that are really threatening to be world record breaking jumps.
Well, the long jump, and I'm going to say this, and I'm not biased. Well, I guess I'm biased because I did the event, but I'm not really biased per se. It's the hardest event in track and field. People say, oh, no, the 400 hurdles, very difficult. Oh, the 800 and the distance is very difficult. But there's no event that makes you do so many things in such a short period of time. And if you just put it in perspective, if you take 4 steps out from the board, your last 4 steps, touching the board, in the air, and landing is 2 seconds. And that's all that. So when I was in the air, for 1.1 seconds from all that jumping, all that stuff, cycling, looking at the board, all that happened in such a short period of time.
Wait, pause, coach. Pause. Say that again because your audio broke up a little bit and that was important. So you were in the air for 1.1 seconds compared to 2 seconds for most people.
No. I was in the air 1.1 second. And if you take the time from the last 4 steps on the runway and hitting the board in the air, that's a total of 2 seconds. So you're only in the air 1 second. And so that's what makes it hard. It's very, very hard. So there's nothing about the long jump that you think you do at that time. It's all muscle memory. When you leave the board, it's muscle memory, the angles. And then on top of that, genetically, we're predisposed to not run off the board to jump far. We're supposed to stay back because you fall forward. So now you're talking about fighting genetics. You're fighting what you're feeling. You're fighting the fear of falling on your face. And then you're doing all these things in a short period of time. We're just not in a culture now that I feel that focuses on those little things. We're a culture that wants to win. And we're fighting to go back to being a culture that wants to be excellent. And so that's what it is. So I put, when I was 17, I said, I want to jump 25 feet. So anything less than trying to get there wasn't enough. Now I'm trying to teach the young people it's not enough to say, I won the world championships if you're jumping 26.7. It's focus on the 29, and then you get both. And that was what my concept was. And that's what I'm trying to teach the young people. It's about performance, not just place.
Well, I hope y'all got pen and pad. I have to repeat what he just said. It's about excellence, not winning. We go into it trying to win, but really you should go into it trying to be excellent, not about the place, but about the performance. Wow.
Yeah, and it's interesting because right now, like Mike Powell and I see each other from time to time, and Bob Beeman and I see each other from time to time. I'm good friends with both of them. And to think about this, between the 2 of us, or the 3 of us rather, indoors and outdoors, Mike Powell has had the world record. In September, it will be 30 years. Bob Beeman held it 23 years. So that's 53 years that the long jump was in 2 people's hands outdoor. And I've now owned the indoor long jump for 40 years. So to think about it, it's just 3 people have held it. If you combine all that, 90 years consecutive, the long jump. And so Of course, I don't want to see someone break it. I don't own the records. You know, I always say records are borrowed and medals are owned. But even this last weekend, we had a great world championship. I'm sorry, excuse me, NCAA championships, and they had a great competition. 3 athletes jumped over 27, and one was close. He was about an inch and a half away from the championship record, which I still hold, which was 40 years ago. So I want to see that. I mean, it's getting through. I'm going to be 60 years old and watching someone try this record again. So I need people to step the game up. Anything I can do to help, because I don't want to come in there on a walker and they're like, they finally got your record, you know, and I'm like, what am I trying to do? I mean, which way up? You know, it's time to get the jumpers consistent and to not look at 27 as excellent. Look at 27 as good. 28 is okay, we're excellent, because once you get to 28, then you have a shot to go to 29.
Mm. But that's the mentality and that's the mental part of coaching when we talk about being more than a coach. And I get to see you do this on a regular basis. And, you know, you have like this persona about you, but also you are a technical genius. When we talk about whether it's the penultimate or whether it's the arm movements, your scoop with the arm movements, you really break things down to make an athlete understand how they have to forget what they thought they knew and embrace something that is going to help them become excellent. Yeah, you might be running good times or jumping good, doing things the way you've always done them. But if you want to be great, then it's going to take small attention to detail to make those big changes.
Yeah, but I learned that when I came here. The thing is, I was a long jumper, sprinter in high school. So I jumped 26.8 in high school, set the high school record. I ran 20.8 in the 200 and ran 10.5 in the 100 in high school. When I came here, I told Coach Les, I want to jump 29 feet. He says, okay, we need to change things. So it was a very frustrating time for me, because I would come to practice. It's not like now, you know, nowadays, it's like, you've been here an hour and a half, got to go home. You know? In our day, well, I would stay late, and it was kind of a running joke when I'd get to the dining hall just before 6 o'clock, running in there. It's like, well, here comes Carl, make him a plate. Because I was always said, can I do another one? Can I do another one? Can I do another one? But it still took a year and into the middle of my sophomore year season for me to finally hit that jump. And it was at the conference meet my sophomore year. So it's a little scary, because you think, well, if I keep doing this, then I know I'm going to be successful, because I have been. But if I try something different, then what if it doesn't work? But if you want to be excellent, you can't have that fear, because you're always tweaking it. When I was 28, 29, I changed my diet completely, because I wanted to continue to become the athlete that I could be. So that was scary, going from a regular meat diet to a plant-based diet, and start drinking silk milk, soy milk instead of regular milk. It was a little scary, but I realized that, you know, I have to do something to keep this process going. And you're always going to put yourself in a situation where there's a little bit of fear in trying something new and something different. But you're either all in or all out. And in sports, unfortunately, so many are just afraid to be all in because they're worried about the future. But I wanted to be perfect. You know, my competition was perfection. So if I would always try to tweak things to try to be perfect on the runway, whenever I would have a long jump competition, fouling was absolutely unacceptable. If I fouled, then that was then I did something wrong. It was like fouling all 6 jumps. Unacceptable. The not figuring out how the wind is and taking the time and going in practice, running against the wind sometimes, or if it starts raining, going to do approaches in the rain, so maybe it doesn't meet. All these things, trying to eliminate the variables. And so that's it. So by the time you get to the meet on Saturday or Friday or whatever it is, you've gone through all this process of things that happen, so you're not surprised when anything.
Wow. And that process, and I think that's what a lot of people lack nowadays, is the patience in the process, trust in the process. And we say that, it sounds cliche, but it is trust in the process, you know, having your process to where when you go to a meet, when you step on the runway or you step in the blocks, you're not really questioning yourself anymore, because you know that you've done all of the little things, all of the sacrifices to lead you to being excellent on that day.
Yeah, and one of the things, piggybacking on that I try to make sure I do, is when any race is over, the first thing I ask them is, what did you think of your race? Because we need them thinking about what's going on. And that's the frustrating thing, because we all go through this trying to teach and try to educate them on how to become the best that they can be. But there's also some work you have to do. And so I can help you get to 90%, but there's got to be that 10% that you're going to have to do away from the track in your own time. And maybe that is just stroking your arms in the mirror at night, or maybe that's just walking through campus, counting your steps in your head. But it's something that you're going to have to do that last 10% yourself. And guess what? That's never going to go away. All the way at the end of my career, I was working on that 10%. And in my last Olympic Games, I was 35 years old. I started counting my steps when I was a freshman. Well, I was counting my steps at 35. And people go, all right, count my steps, I'm going to stop that. And I'm like, well, it got me for a gold medal, so I guess it's okay for you.
And sometimes people stop doing the things that help them to become successful. You know what works for you. Why would you stop doing it after you've reached success? And then you're wondering why you're not having success anymore.
Yeah, well, it's a basketball player. A basketball player that shoots good free throws continues to practice the free throws. So the ones say, oh, I got it now, I shot 90% this year. If they stop practicing, then that percentage is going to go down. So it's the same thing in everything, because your body is not a machine. It actually tweaks a little bit here, a little bit there. And if you sleep wrong, your back may be this shoulder may be a little bit tighter. Things like that happen. So you're going to have to constantly always adjust and find out, no, get you back there. You take 3 weeks off season, and then something's a little different. No, you have to come back. We want to try to have the absolute perfect, the best possible process and the best performance you can, but you're going to have to always keep watching it in order to get there. And that's why it's so important you as an athlete to understand what you're doing, so that ultimately one day your coach becomes your eyes and someone that you can throw opinion and ideas with, not just someone that tells you everything. Question it. And one thing that I really wanted to do, I wanted Coach Tellez to tell me why I didn't want to do something over and over. I was not an emotional athlete, never was. And so I was like, okay, you want me to do this? Why? Well, because this. Okay, I get it. I understand. Now, make sure it's clear, because I don't want to do this all day for a month. I want to learn it now, because I have to jump 29 feet. So he would explain it, and I would decipher, and then I'd work on it, and bam, it would happen. Some of it took longer because of that, but that's the way I did it. So often now we work with someone and we explain something, you have a good day, and then the next day it's like, did we just do this yesterday? So we're starting over and over and over. So you're not invested in that 10% to make sure, okay, now my 10% today is say, I can't forget that. I get it. Tomorrow, I had an athlete today that I've been talking to for a long time about standing up. He just leans over a little bit too much. Well, finally today in video, yesterday rather, he sent me a direct message. I watched the video and I am leaning over too much. Well, he didn't, when he said it, it wasn't necessarily a connection to what I've been talking about, but he got it. And so it didn't really matter if I said it 100 times. I'm a parent. We tell our kids the right thing, and then someone else says it, and then they go and say, oh, guess what so-and-so told me? I'm like, I've been telling you forever. And so they did that. But it doesn't matter, because we got the process. So now they're going to get that. But guess why? Their 10% was looking at video of practice today or my race the other day. That's the 10%. So that's why he's improving, because he is taking ownership of that 10%.
And you know what? That makes a difference, because you talked about how U of H, we get athletes from Texas and athletes from Houston. And some of these athletes that you have done phenomenal work with come out of high school, and they're not the highly recruited ones. Some of them are walk-ons, and then now you're ending up giving them money because they're putting everything together and having the performances. Let's talk a little bit about that, Coach, because I don't think that U of H gets enough credit for that.
Well, thank you for that. One of the things that we are benefit of, and I got to sit here and say I'm a genius, but I'm going to tell you something. Houston, Texas is the #1 high school track and field city on earth. So I start from the beginning. So I'll have to run around and do all that stuff. I used to go to some high school track meets and hit it. But there are 2 kids on the team, one's a freshman, one's a sophomore. COVID sophomore, I call him, because he got the year back from COVID, not a red shirt, but a COVID sophomore. And so she came in, and it wasn't easy beginning. She didn't really know how to practice that well, but I saw immediately, this girl's fast. So we really worked hard, and it started going, but the process was difficult because she doesn't like the breakdown. She didn't like these things, but her first meet, she ran extremely well. And then the second meet, she went out of town and just what I call rolled up. That means you got beat. She got rolled up. And so I said, well, you're rolled up. And she was a little shell shocked. I said, you're rolled up because the other girls practice hard. They do the Monday breakdowns. They do these things. And so it kind of turned the light on. But I understand you're going to have to constantly turn that light on. But she's now one of the three fastest athletes in the conference. Her time has dropped dramatically as a freshman, and I'm really excited about her outdoor season. And then
let me say one thing about her. I went to a high school meet about a month or so ago, and I saw her high school coach, and she said, "What did y'all do to so and so? How did y'all get that out of her?" And I'm like, "Hey, H-Town Speed City. I don't know."
How you do it? But there's another guy, a guy on the team that I saw as a junior in high school, and he was tall and didn't start very well. He was a little chubby. And I said, that guy could be pretty good because I liked how he stayed relaxed and ran at the end. Senior year, that was 2017. Senior year was 2018. Well, we all know that I was completely bombarded in 2018 with Elijah and Cameron and the 4x1. So I just got distracted. He sat out a year, went to another school, and then decided to transfer in as a walk-on. Well, the first year he improved really from 690 to 679, which was a big improvement for him. But I said, well, if you lose a little weight and really dedicate yourself to our fall season, because the way we train in the fall is the philosophy is train in the fall for the spring, train in the spring for the summer. Because we have a lot of athletes, probably going to have about 4 or 5 on the team that are going to the Olympics. So I train them for the whole year. So indoors for me is not that important. Like we've had success. But as you notice in our program, and you've been there, everyone runs well late. No one's going to run fast times in April and March. We don't do that. You'll see them come around in May and June and July. So he really took to that off season and said, I'm going to do this. And so the fall was tremendous. Well, here's a guy who came here as a 22-second 200-meter indoors. Well, this year he ran 20.93 at 669 and learned the mechanics, learned what to do. It took to the workouts 100%. But not only that, but it also changed the way the others started training. Some of the other people, older and younger, started saying, wow, it does make sense, those breakdowns and those time runs and that stuff they do. Because we don't do a lot of things, as you know, in the fall. We don't get in spikes in the fall. We don't do a lot of fast running in the fall. We don't do that because we want to focus on the long-term time. And you see our times reflected as that we never run fast in January. So those are two that really illustrate it. But Mario Burr came in as a 10-3 in high school. He ran 10-2, 10-1, 10-0, 9-9 his 4 years. Cameron was a legal 10-3 in high school. He went to 9-9. Elijah Hall, the same thing. They all came down. Elijah left as a 19, 200 meters. Kamari Montgomery, Obi Bakwe, Amir Latin. I mean, look what he did out of high school. No one ever thought that this guy would have become a decent intermediate hurdler. Even he didn't think it. And of course, now he's on the world championship team. So our program, we have never really gone out and sought out the number one guys because in the beginning, they were only going to Power 5 schools. And now we convince people it's not about Power 5. It's really about being the absolute best that you can be. When you teach these kids to be excellent and they get it done. So it's something that they believed in. We have a lot of fun here at H-Town Speed City. And every year is different. I mean, this is a new challenging year because this is without question. I have the most people, the most speed, even on the women's side and the men's side than we've ever had. I mean, the men's team is good as any ever, and so we're excited about that. But that also brings me challenges, that they say more money, more problems. But I'm not afraid of those challenges, and most of those kids here again are right from here.
So let's talk about some of the challenges, Coach, and let's talk about, what COVID has done to our indoor season and to track and field as a whole, really, because there's some programs who've been more affected by COVID and, cancellation of meets, cancellation of conference championships, more so than other schools. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, COVID has been obviously a global challenge for all of us in sports and business and life. And it's really how different people have been affected by it. I mean, last year, when the NBA said we're going to shut down our season, all the sports basically followed their lead and shut down, and that was it for the year. And that was something that was universal, very frustrating, especially for the high school kids, but it was something that was universal. We were all in it. And then from that point on, I think we started to see a divergence of ideas. certain schools and conferences were really dedicated to how can we make this work, and sports. How can we make it work to get the kids back on the track, on the field, on the court, wherever it is? How can we get it done? And other conferences took a different direction and says, how can we bail out? Now, I look at a conference like the Ivy League, they were very consistent, and it's very clear what they were doing. I know they're not really playing spring, they didn't play winter and fall, but they're pretty clear and consistent in what they're doing. And I know a lot of the Power Fives, they were saying, we're going to compete. And they did a tremendous job of doing that and staying consistent. But, we have a lot of people that weren't there. I mean, if you look at it, gosh, close to 40% of the conferences did not compete. And so there were tons of athletes that were not even at nationals. And then, of course, we're in the American Conference, and it was extremely frustrating for us because it just seemed like there was, at the top level of our conference, there was absolutely no interest whatsoever in having a season. And when you don't have a conference season, especially in a program like ours, you end up running basically a series of scrimmages. And we hosted meets because we have a world-class indoor facility, but we didn't have the type of schedule we normally had. And then generally about 60% of the athletes that go to nationals qualify in their conference meet. So even if you have a season, the chances are you're not going to qualify for nationals. And so I'm really, really still frustrated with the lack of support, the lack of vision, and then just kind of the lazy way the American Conference played games with our sport. And I'm really happy that they were able to commit to other sports. But here again, the most diverse sport in really the NCAA, the largest, most diverse sport is track and field. And again, they feel like that's the one they can get rid of. And that's what they did. There was no issue, no interest ever. 1 second, they can say what they want, but they had no interest in ever having track and field this indoor season. And they just canceled. And it really killed our conference for the season.
Wow. I see a question here from Dr. Carrie Collins. It says, what obstacles are you coaches experiencing at the collegiate level with your athletes? And go ahead, everyone, start submitting questions in the comment section.
Yeah, well, the biggest challenge now, obviously with COVID, we have to keep people healthy. You have to train in a way that is a little different because you're in groups. Just to let you know, I have 16 male sprinters, 100, 200 only. And then I have 5 female sprinters, and then the long jumpers, male and female. So I have 25 people. But you can't have all of them together all the time because if one person gets sick or something, it could take the entire group down. So we had to double our practice time. That's the first thing, because we had to break the groups up. So now, all of a sudden, instead of going from, let's say, 11 on the track to 2 or 3, we're going from 10 to 4 or 5. So that was the biggest challenge we had. And as athletes, it's very frustrating because they have to adjust to taking classes, some online. Some of our international students had to go into classrooms to take classes. And so there's that adjustment. There's as much face-to-face meeting with the academic advisors as there usually is. Normally they meet all the time. Now they're doing that virtually. So there are a lot of challenges, but the key is that for a while, the challenges were similar. And during the indoor season, they were no longer similar, and that's what made it really difficult for us. The university, for the most part, has really done a good job of helping us put the meets on. They supported the program. That's why we had the success. And if we didn't have a university support, we could have done it. There's no way we would have done anything. And we ended up just kind of blowing the indoor season off and now focus on outdoors. The new challenge for outdoors will be adjusting to having some fans in the stands, some people. There are varying degrees of who competed. Some of the people only competed 2 or 3 meets. Others competed 4 or 5. We had seniors who did not compete at all indoors, but for your school, our seniors only ran 1 race. That was the last year. So just bringing everyone together, getting the concepts and ideas together. And then, unfortunately for us, March has been scrunched down with one less weekend. So now we have less time to prepare for the outdoor season. Our in-season was last Saturday. Our outdoor season starts tomorrow, Thursday. And then Texas Relays is the week after. We don't have a relay team. We haven't even run a relay yet. So there are a lot of challenges, but none of it's in comparison with the challenges every day of the average person who hasn't worked in months, who's lost family members who we care about, who are dealing with everything. Their restaurants are closed, their businesses are closed. it just pales in comparison to those challenges, but it just tells you that we all are in it together. And so I always want to continuously look up to a future where I feel more comfortable with vaccines coming, with leadership at the presidential level, and all of us getting in this together, because it's all about everyone to make sure that we can come on the other side of the pandemic in a way that our country can move forward, and then it trickles down to our athletes as well.
Right. And the athletes are feeling the pain of all of that too, because people who are losing jobs or losing money, those are people's parents, those are people's relatives, people who are sick. So I was talking to Coach Burrow yesterday, and I was telling about someone who, was crying at practice, and he said, I wonder if he said, it seems like this has increased since COVID, because anxiety across the board, human beings are experiencing more anxiety, and it's only natural. Just because someone's an athlete doesn't mean that they're immune to feeling the stress of what's going on in society.
Yes, and on top of that, parents losing jobs in these situations and the difficulty they're dealing with. Well, COVID has also created a problem at the NCAA level, because now think about this season. We have last year's team with this year's new freshmen. So our team basically has just over 60 athletes on the men's side, let's say. And of those 60 athletes, only about 16 are juniors and seniors. So we have almost 30 freshmen on the team, because it's 2 seasons of freshmen rather. So now, how are you going to manage a scholarship? So now all of a sudden, all these schools that thought people would be graduating, moving on, they have another year, so we don't have scholarship money. At the same time, parents are losing jobs, so they can't pick up the slack. So now kids that were D1 kids or whatever are having to go to D2 or to junior college or NEIA, because there's no space, because we don't have the scholarships. So it's just a challenge at every single level. And then on top of that, the high school kids. We can't even go to track meets. We can't see them. They can't come on campuses. They can't visit. So I think on the other side, we're going to come out with some good things about maybe we do too much visiting and maybe we do too many things, and we can do a lot more virtual. That may be good. It saves families and also schools money and time. And then we can maybe we'll film these meets more, so that we don't have to go to every single track meet. We can get to know kids better because we're using social media. So we're going to come out a different world at every single level. Be outside of track. I mean, I do a lot of appearances. Well, my appearances are many of them are now shifting to virtual, and that'll never change. So that's also something that, what's the world going to look like in the future, not just in everyday business, but in sports and in college sports as well.
Right. And with things looking differently, it takes into account that people need to change the way that they think about everything differently as well. People look at you and they think that you just always had it easy. You made a comment the other day and you said that you weren't that good when you were a freshman in high school. It seems like Carl Lewis touched the track and was just breaking records from day one. So you did the hurdles, Coach?
Yeah, okay, so here's my quick story here. My mother and father started a track club. Mainly my mother's was the lead in that, starting a track club called the Willingboro Track Club in my hometown, because girls had no access to track and field. So it was a girls team in the late 60s, 69 she started. And then of course boys joined, and I was only 9 years old when I joined, and my sister Carol was 7. Well, I was a very late bloomer. So when I was in 9th grade, I was very small. At the end of 10th grade, I was about 5'5", 120 something pounds. But I loved track, because that's what we did. It was kind of like a family business. My parents were both public school teachers. I went to the same school in our neighborhood. Then we went to track practice and then track meets. So we were together all the time. And so I wanted to be good, because my sister Carol was phenomenal for the first team she started. My older brother Cleve was a soccer All-American. My oldest brother was county record holder. And I was kind of a little kid that was convinced to just work hard. And so it wasn't just about hard work that got me better. It's like, it's not that cliche. It's just that when I wasn't winning, my parents convinced me to be the absolute best I could be. So I worked on my technique, and I did these things, and I tried every event to figure out something I could be decent. And so I settled in the long jump and triple jump and the hurdles, because a lot of times the hurdles were the sprinters that were not as fast. So I was always the person that, if I made the relay, it was like third leg, or did it. So my junior year, I ran 14-1 in the high hurdles. I was under 40 in the intermediates. I ran 9-3 in the 100. 21 low in the 200. I jumped 25.9 in long jump and triple jump over 46 feet. And then so I was like, I can't do all of this. It's too much. That doesn't even include the relays, the 4x1 and 4x4. So I went to my coach and finally I started saying, I want to get better. But what happened is at the end of 10th grade, I really didn't have those performances. I was different, but I was 5'5", that small kid. But my technique was good. I could hurdle because my mother knew hurdles. I was long jumping, all this stuff. But between my sophomore year and senior year is when it changed because I was, like I said, 5'5", but I graduated at 6 feet. So I grew all these inches in those 2 years. And as I grew, I got better because I just started to mature. And I was one of those kids that just looked a lot younger than I was until I started to mature. So for
you
me,
still look younger than you are.
Yeah. Can I swap with the? Can I look older and be younger? No, anyway. So, yeah. So that was just kind of where it was. But I'm going to tell you something. And crazy it is, I jumped 23 feet in 10th grade, which it's a good jump. In 10th grade, I jumped 23 feet. But when I got my Letterman's jacket, I put 25 feet on it. And I don't know what I was thinking, but I put 25 feet on that Letterman's jacket. And around where I was because the South Jersey record was 23.9 or something. The state record was 24.11 by Ronald Nehemiah. So when I put that on there, it was a hot mess. They were like, you have lost your mind, 25 feet, no one thinks of that. And so strangely enough, that was at the end of my sophomore year. And I wasn't sure. It was just probably the first time I put my name on something, And so that was probably right around June, July of my sophomore year. Well, August of my junior year, I jumped 25.9. And I would have never imagined. And that's when everything exploded. Because now I jumped 25.9 as a just turned 17-year-old junior. And I was about 5'10" then, but I was still skinny though. so I was a beanpole. But yeah, my junior year I ran 9.3 yards and jumped 25.9. And that's when it all exploded for me. And that's when I thought, wow, if I can do this, I want the high school record. I want the high school national record, indoor and out. And so that was my immediate goal. And the long-term goals, I knew I can make the Olympic team. So it happened so fast. So from the time I finished school in junior high school, I went from 9.7 to 9.3, and from 24 high to 25.9. And just that transition did it. And then 1 year later, as a senior, I went to 26.8. And 26.8 took me to the American Games as a 17-year-old. I made the Pan Am team and was number 2 in the world. I'm number 2 in the U.S., number 5 in the world in the long jump. So it all happened. And by the way, the reason I stopped hurdling is because it was too many events, but I made a bet with my coach. It wasn't a thing like, I don't want to hurdle anymore, it's a wrap. But I said, look, I want to stop the hurdles. And he looks at me like, I had probably 250 heads. And so I said, what if I run under 9.5 this summer? Can I stop the hurdles? And of course, if you run 9.7 in New Jersey, you were mobile. And I'm saying all these times, people, these are yards. It just tells you my age. It was hand time yards. So if you want to get the real time, you add 1.1. So a 9.7 is really a 10.8 fully automatic time. That's fully automatic, 100 meters. That's to give you perspective. So I went out that summer and I ran at 9.3. And then when I came back to start training for the next season, we never discussed the hurdles. I never went to hurdle practice. It wasn't even thing like when you did your job, it was just over. And I never did it again. But I really missed the hurdles because I think I could have been as good or better hurdler as a sprinter. I really did. But
I can see it
long jump was a baby now. So I was like, whatever I have to do to make sure my baby's taken care of, I did it. And that was the long jump.
Yeah, I see you get passionate about the hurdles. You every day at practice, you're watching those hurdlers too. I can tell that you are a hurdler at heart.
I can't get rid of those hurdles, boy.
Now, let me ask you this. You mentioned a couple of things. You mentioned putting that 25 feet on your Letterman jacket, even though you were only jumping 23 something. And even though it was further than the state record, and you were a 5'5", 120-pound scrawny kid at that time, people are afraid to verbalize their goals. How big is that goal setting process for you? Because it seems like you visualize what you're going to do, you put it out there, and then you go out there and you accomplish it. Is that something that more athletes need to embrace?
You know, it's interesting because, like I said, I had wonderful parents that taught me everything I needed to know. They were absolute. There's nothing. My father was great to my mother. My mother was great to my father. They were great to us. They were wonderful in the community. I am so blessed by wonderful parents, my aunts, and all of that. So that's where it starts. And they gave me the confidence that I guess I could feel I could fall back if I had to. But there are two real things. Number one, that 25 foot on my jacket. But the other one was when I came to Houston, and this is a true story. It's a statement that I've said it a million times. Coach Tellez asked me, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be a millionaire and I never want a real job. And I want to jump 29 feet. And he was like, okay, that's a lot, you know. And the reason why that was so important, I didn't realize it. I was 18 when I said that. And so I was so naive about all of it. The 29 feet, no, was absolutely a goal because I wanted to jump past Bob Beamon, who was just immortalized in my world. But when I was in the sport a year, I realized, wait a minute, this sport doesn't have any money. How could you be a millionaire? There's no money here, you know. It's like, you know, it's like saying I'm gonna be a millionaire after my paper route. No, the paper route's the first thing, but then you keep going, you know. So because of that, I realized if I'm gonna make that, then I'm gonna have to change the sport and make it professional. So that's what inspired me to work with people to make it professional. So if I hadn't put that out there in the first place, the goal, then it would have inspired me to do it. And also understanding the business side of it and the fairness side of it. So that was my quest to keep drugs out of it, because I thought we don't want a sport where kids have to take drugs or we're cheating. So all these things happened because I made that simple little goal. And then the 29 feet was something I wrestled with quite a bit, because when I started sprinting and having such success, it started taking away from the long jump. But then my thing was, yeah, I know I could jump 29 feet in my heart, but I didn't know if I could take 4 gold medals. And so it distracted me. So the thing is that I jumped 28 feet in May of 1981, and I jumped 29 feet for the first time in September of 1991, so 10 years later. So I jumped 28 feet every single year for 10 years before I jumped 29 feet. And strange enough, talking about goals, Mike Powell and I were doing an interview once, and they said, when was the first time you saw Carl? And Mike said, actually, I was sitting in the stands the day that Carl jumped 28 feet for the first time. I was not aware of it. This is about 4 or 5 years ago. And he says, I was like, wow, I want to be the best in the long jump in the world, because I was still only 19, so I was young. So people didn't really, they were just getting to know me because I set the world record 2 months earlier. So he was like, wow, I'm going to beat him. I have to jump 28 feet. So Mike Powell started thinking 28 feet when he was 17. And then guess what? We competed against each other the next year, a couple of years later. So he went 8 years of losing before he beat me one time. So these are all goals that happen because in their mind, they either mind or publicly you put your name on it. So he said, I had to jump 28 when I was 17. And he jumped 28 a few years later, but then he obviously went on to jump the world record. So that's the thing is, but if he had paid attention to that jump and that moment, he said, well, I want to be better than that, so I have to be better than that. That he would have never jumped 29, or if I had put that in there, I would have changed it. So you have to put that goal out there and put your name on it, like I say, and try to go out and achieve it.
And not give up, because like you just said, he competed against you for 8 years before he got the world record. And you know, we make each other better. You made him better. You made him have to go out there and jump that jump.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And the long jump, which for me, and then we talked about it earlier, but when I came in, the long jump was pretty close to what it is 2 years ago. And when I came in, I was like, well, I was just young, 18, 19, 19. I don't know what they're doing. I'm trying to jump 29 feet. So they can do whatever they do, you know. But all I know is I'm trying to jump 29 feet. So when I started jumping 27 high and 28, it felt like, okay, what's this guy doing? And then when's he going to come back to earth? And then I think everyone woke up in 82 and said, he's only 20 years old. He's not going anywhere. And then guess what? They started jumping far. I've been, in Olympic trials where Larry Myers jumped 28, 8 and 3/4. And then I came back and jumped 28, 9. He jumped 28, 8 and 3/4 and lost. I jumped 29, 2 and 3/4 and lost. You didn't make a team unless you jumped 28 feet. You jumped 27, 11, you're fifth. So that the athletes are there. They're here. It's just they have to dedicate themselves to not just winning performances, but I've got to jump far. What do I have to do to jump far? Larry Marks, he started running the 200, made teams. Mike Conley, those guys were sprinters. They didn't do that at that level before then. But then he said, well, if he's out there sprinting and win, I got to do it. So we all fed off each other. And then when Mike and I retired basically at the same time, it kind of went down. Dwight Phillips did well, and a couple of other international guys, but it just kind of faded back. And it's almost pretty close to where it was when I started 40 years ago. And so now I hope that we can build on these jumpers now and not just go too gaga over their performances and say, oh, great, that's one step to where they can be better than the guys that were in the past.
Wow. And that goal setting, like, it's just a part of who you are, and that putting something out there and going to get it. I guess it was about a year ago, and you went on you revamped your diet. And I know you're on the quest right now to do 300 pounds at 60. Can you talk a little, because when you said how much you lost, and I was like, how in the world did this man like just completely transform his body in this time frame? And I think that that's the same thing that you did as an athlete. You set a goal, you put your mind on it, and you made whatever sacrifices it took to make it happen. How much weight did you lose, Coach?
I lost I can say it all now. I was at 221, which is ridiculous. And I saw a picture of myself, and I was like, seriously? And I got all the way down to 183, and so almost 40 pounds. And that took a while. And what I did, I just said, it's a wrap. So I knew what to do diet-wise. My diet's mostly plant-based. So I focused on my diet, started counting the calories and things like that. I started riding my bike and putting in miles in, try to get 50 to 75 miles a week. And then stadium steps. And it took a while to get really started. So I was on those stadium steps. And it didn't lose that much. At first, you lose a bit at first, and then it slows down, and then gets closer, gets slower. And so then when I got to January, I just got under 200 pounds in January. So I started this in September. So then I said, well, the last time I lost a lot of weight, I did it by working things like aerial silks and Pilates, which was great. But this time I said, I want to build some muscle, because then I was like early mid-50s. Now I'm almost 60. And I was like, I don't even know if I could gain this muscle and stuff anymore. I just don't know at this age, because fortunately I've never done it before. So then I started lifting, and I said, I want to do something, put something out there. So I decided to do this 360 challenge. Now, my lifetime best is 295 pounds when I was in my 30s, because I wasn't a big weightlifter. I did that after I retired. So now I'm trying to have a lifetime best at 60. And It's totally different, because you respond differently. At first, I couldn't believe how weak I'd gotten, because I hadn't lifted weights in 8 years. And it started hard, and then bam, the pandemic comes, so I lose U-Base gym. So now it's like, well, how are we going to work out? So I kind of put together a gym here in my house. I have a room, and I've just been going on. And so now we're doing this question. So if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see a lot of stuff, and that's where I post personal stuff and all of that on Instagram. And then I do there's a lot of the talking about the sports and everything on Twitter, but Instagram is where I really do a lot of the stuff when I try to make sure that I talk about more personal things, and I talk about
Dramo says Carl still looks the same as when I met him at the Drake Relays in 1994.
You do. You know what? Was that the snow year? Because you know what? It's funny, because we were Drake, because when my career wound down, I wanted to go everywhere. And I was with the band, so we went to Drake one year, and I woke up and it was snowing. And this is what I had to do with. Woke up, it was snowing. And I'm like, okay, so what are we going to do? So I called Coach West, and I said, Coach, it's snowing outside, right? Yeah, make sure you bundle up quick. Nowadays, they'd be like, oh, I need new clothes, new shoes. I need a separate pair because my feet may get wet. He's like, make sure you bundle up quick. We'll be brought up clothes.
Oh my gosh, this has been hilarious. Oh, he said, oh yes. So you ran against Antoine Maybank.
Oh yeah, yeah. But then he
Okay.
mostly ran, and well, he mostly ran the 400, but yeah, and jumped. He was a long jumper as well, very good long jumper.
Mm-hmm. Because Dre went to Iowa with me. Andre Morris.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah, good Lord.
Antoine Maybank was a little, I think he was gone when I got there. So,
Yeah, yeah,
yes.
because he was on the 96 team.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know what, Coach? We are going to follow you on Instagram. Is that where you're going to post the video when you actually lift the 300 pounds?
Yeah, I haven't decided. I think I'm gonna do a live thing, but yeah, Carl Lewis, Carl underscore Lewis underscore official.
Official. Yes.
Yeah, Carl Lewis
Yes.
official, and then on Twitter we know it's just Carl Lewis and it's me sitting there in our black H-Town Speed City shirt. So yeah, I think
Yes.
now there's a little bit. Full disclosure, that both sites are a little different. I always put the Instagram. I always kind of share it on Twitter, but I'm a lot more political and stuff on Twitter than I am. I'm the same person I've always been. I'm going to be honest. And on Instagram, I have a lot more fun, and you see a lot of me in the gym, in my little gym, or working out.
I posted a little video of you yesterday. Every now and then I tape you at practice because, Coach, I'm gonna just tell you, you hilarious. You're like he being real professional, but Coach Carl is hilarious. He is like when he said at the beginning, shady. Oh my gosh, Carl will have you rolling the whole practice, but it elevates and it brings a level of fun to the practice to where we don't want to just be stiff all the time as coaches and everything is just so serious because people join the sport to have fun and you bring an element of fun to every practice.
Well, one of my mottos that especially coming out of the pandemic, I said I wanted to make sure I had the group laugh every day at one point of some sort. And I like to laugh. And yes, I am shady. I am the shadiest this person, and if you think that I'm slipping, then make sure you remind me. There's no doubt about that. It's just I own it. I own my shade. It is. And all we have to say, oh yeah, he is. He's shady. I'll call you out. I'll tell the truth. All of that. But because when I competed at the collegiate level, I loved it. I loved my teammates. We never won a conference championship, but we sure fought hard to get it. But we never won it. And then I came back to my professional career and went all those years. And Coach Burrell and Leo Burrell and Floyd Hurd and Mike Marsh and Michelle Finn and my sister Carol. We had so much fun. We trained hard and we were hurting. But the thing is that we laughed about it. So one of the things I know in the hard days, they're like, oh, it's difficult. And I'm like, look, let me tell you the truth. You never remember an easy day of practice. You gonna always remember that hard day, right? So I said, just go and say, Coach Carl gave me stories. I'll give you stories at least one day a week, and I think that you should have fun, but it's got to be serious. But so my thing is that you have to come serious, do your 10%, and then we'll give you a little time for relief.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much, Coach. We might have to do this again because there's so much we can't really get into under the hour, but we're going to have you come back and talk because Carl knows everybody. I was wearing a Tupac shirt at practice a couple weeks ago, and he said, oh, yeah, I remember when I met him in Vegas.
Yeah, we're talking about doing some things with kids. Yeah, he and Suge and I were talking about some things we're going to do. They're like, seriously? Yeah, I've been around long enough. I know everybody.
Everybody, Frank Sinatra and all of them.
Yeah, that's right. Chairman of the board.
Well, thank you so much, Coach, and I hope to have you again. And I will see you tomorrow at the track meet. We're gonna start the season off right.
Great, thank you. Let's do this every month. Let's pick a day.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Every
great,
month, everybody, you heard it here. Subscribe and share this video. And Coach Lewis has a lot. King Carl, that's what we call him in our house, King Carl, for real. Yes, and we need to talk a little bit more next time about your mom and her activism because that's something that I definitely wanted to talk about in Black History Month. But thank you so much, Carl, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, everybody,
great, thank you.
for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me. All right, see you.
Thank you.